Hi, everybody. It's Chris Petrie, and thanks for coming by. Welcome, everyone. And we're going to just make a start of it here. We're actually going to work from a card I made recently. So this is basically like a nice landscape painting with some beautiful distant mountains in the background and some trees, lots of trees and shadowing, beautiful shadowing. And then we're going to do some rocks in the foreground. So this is kind of like a real treat. Like if you like nature, you like going out to the parks, to the mountains, hiking, anything outdoorsy, you're going to enjoy this. Just the feeling of the beauty of outdoors, you're going to get that real sense of enjoyment while painting this, as if you're outdoors and actually, you almost become like one with nature when you're painting a painting like this, because you're actually seeing pretty much everything you'll see when you're out in nature, when you're out in the, again, parks or local hiking trails and so forth, or even just locally around the streets. It's just a beautiful feeling of outdoors and sunlight, bright sunlight, atmosphere. Let's get started. Again, this is a card I made for my family members recently. So, and it had incorporated the ideas of some beautiful grass and fields, tons of trees, distant purplish mountains, purplish blue mountains here, and it just seems like it was really, I have to be honest, it was a very simple painting to do. I did this very quickly. It was very fun, very free. And sometimes those are the best paintings, when we just kind of go in and have a fun time and we're not getting too bogged down with details and, too much fussing. I know I do a lot of, measuring a lot of times and laying out things. That's more for like landscape, like streetscapes, buildings, kind of doing things that are more like, I would say like subject matter that's like architecture or things of that nature. Whereas this here is more free. Nature is more free. Things are going every which way. The sunlight's bouncing around. It's exciting. Let's get started. First thing we're going to do is we're going to get our Sharpie, and we'll do a little bit of, which is important, we'll do a little bit of layout. We're going to do our sunlight. Sunlight is coming from up above, sort of out, pretty much overhead, I would say, but a little bit out in front of us. So we're painting this one into the light, and you can kind of see that the shadows from the trees are across the fronts of the trees, which means the light is from behind, more or less. So that's why we'll make our insignia here with our light. And then we're going to notice another thing really very important. About 2/3 of the way up is our hills in the distance. So if we call this thirds, 1/3, 2/3, and 3/3. So we'll do 1/3, 2/3, and 3/3. 2/3 up at the top are mountains. And then about 1/3 down here is the mountains. I would say right about here is where the mountains are. We could put an M for mountain, and then maybe like a G for grass. Just so we kind of get the idea that the grass is about here. So it's a little bit of an angle across, and that's a big part of this painting, is having that angle across. This way we feel like there's hills. That's really critical. Does that make sense? If we were just to put the line of the mountains in the distance and the grass straight across the page, that's not going to be as exciting and have the feel of like being in the mountains or in the hills. If we can take this line of the grass and the hills and tip it like this across on an angle like that, automatically you feel like you're seeing that hill feeling, that sloping of the ground. So that's real important. Let's make sure we get that. All right, so here we go. So we're going to go down and just do a light pencil sketch across, just so we have that idea. And the mountains are here. We have some big mountains in the back here, like that. Then we have another mountain range up here. It's a little bit closer maybe. And then it gets kind of just mysterious in the middle. We're not too worried about that. You can kind of see it's lighter in the middle here. So we'll just remember in this section right here, maybe we'll put more white paper. And then we're going to put our blue sky on the either side. But we'll do that as we paint. That's not a real big deal at this point. So now for the foreground, we're going to do some rock shapes. So I'm just going to come up here and I'm going to do some rock shapes like in the picture that we have. So I'm just working from my occasional card that I had made about a week or two ago. And what I did is I left a small opening over here where the grass is going to come down and go right to the bottom of the page with the grass over on this right-hand side. So I can do another note here and just put in between these two lines, grass. Just so I remember, I want to leave this grass and I don't want to really do rocks over here because the feelings of rocks are going to look good and solid in the painting, kind of weight the picture down. But if I have all rocks across the whole foreground here, then I'm going to feel like I'm blocked from going up into the fields and maybe even into the further mountains ahead. So I don't want to have that feeling of being blocked in my painting, so I want to leave an escape route going up through here, a place where anyone can walk up through. If someone's viewing your picture, they'll feel like they can walk right through here because there's grass versus the rocks. The rocks might make it feel like we can't get beyond this. So let's keep that in mind. That's really important here to leave that grass over here. So the main important details I am putting onto my tape. Other than that, we're home free here. I'm going to do some trees here. So I'll make the larger ones up front. I'll just lightly sketch them in. And I'm going to use pretty much what I did in the picture here. And another one here. So I guess the larger trees, they're going to be thicker. They're here. And we'll do most of the trees and the branches with our brush. We're not going to get it all detailed with our pencil sketch. We're just going to get the basic idea. And then some shadowing. Let's just make sure we put a little shadowing like this with our pencil, just so we remember that's where our shadows are going to go once we start putting our shadows in on top of the grass in this beautiful field we have here. So now over here we're going to do some more distant trees. So these over here are thinner and more mysterious on the sides of the painting. You'll often hear me say this when you're creating paintings. You can always put less detail and less emphasis on the sides of your painting and leave more of the interesting, let's say, well, I'm not say interesting, but this is a way to sort of direct the person's eye that's viewing your artwork. It's a way of directing their eye towards maybe a place you want that the eye to look and to rest upon as you're doing your artwork and you're creating an idea of someone. So we might want the person's eye to come in here where the grass is and kind of walk up through the fields and move around. So that's all we do is and if we kind of lighten up and make the sides of the painting a little less detailed, maybe soften it a little bit on the sides of the painting, then the person who's viewing this painting is going to more or less stay around the middle area of the painting, and they're not going to wander off too far with their when they're viewing your painting. So that's an idea to keep in mind. And again, this is really fun, and I'm not going to sometimes just let's do most of it with the brush. With the brushes, we're going to use some needlepoint brushes for these really fine trees here. And what we'll do is we'll just have a kind of a method to it. Okay, so I lightly sketched in tree shapes just so I remember that we want to, and we want to make real small ones back here too, really tiny ones. Just make some tiny little pointy, use the very tippy point of your brush, your pencil, and just put some tiny ones there too so you remember. Let's remember to put these in, these really tiny ones, because that's going to give us that feeling of distance through the painting. All right, we're really getting set now to do our painting. Let's take a break. Before we take a break, let's wash up our palette. A little spritzer bottle. And paper towel. Take some paper towel. We want to have fresh colors. And so we'll just tidy up our palette here a little bit. And maybe a little bit of spritzer bottle water on the paint. Okay, let's take a break. We'll come back and we'll begin the painting. Okay, now we're going to get started with our painting. Let's get going here. I will use just a round watercolor brush. This is a number 8 Raphael brush. And what we're going to do is, I think the best way to approach this is, let's not get too worried about the grass in the fields here with our colors, because the real, I guess, exciting part of this picture are the trees, the upright feeling of the trees. So, and the shadowing, that's the real exciting part. That kind of gives the whole picture the feel. So I'm just going to get some basic green and gold colors along these fields here. So I guess what I'm saying is, let's not get too worried about how we're going to mix these colors or how we're going to put them on the page. We're just going to get them on there as like an undercoating as we go. But before we do that, let's get on our blue. We'll do this as a glazing. So we'll use our cerulean blue for our sky color, a little French ultramarine blue. We're going to have some purple for our mountains as well. And we'll leave the colors nice and fresh and pure. I don't think we have to really gray anything down. Maybe a little bit of burnt umber in the sky color, maybe a little burnt umber too in the purple. We could always do that just to lessen the intensity of the colors. It's always good to try it out, because everyone has different eyesight. So when you're looking at your colors, you can always try experiments, try a painting with adding some complementary colors to whatever colors you're using, to see if you like a more grayer look to your paints, to your washes, or if you just want to leave your washes pure color, that's fine too. That looks great. So it depends on what kind of painting you're going to paint too as well. You can do both types of paintings, both styles. I paint everything basically. I tell everybody I paint everything there is. So I try everything, try all different kinds of styles, colors, subject matter. So I kind of try to do everything. I feel it makes me a better artist. And so let's start out our blue sky. Cerulean blue. And again, the sky and grass, essentially. So I'm just going to get the color on. The sky and the grass. And we said we were going to leave a little more brighter white paper in the center here between the two areas, like in the center of the page. So let's leave that a little lighter. Notice I don't put as much color there. And then the colors are more over this way. A little bit of purple in there too. Harmonize the painting a little bit by adding a little bit of color of the same variety throughout. Now we're going to go on to our cerulean, I would say cerulean and mineral violet. Let's see, let's get that. This here is a touch of blue, but also equal parts of mineral violet. And let's get that onto the grass area. Lighter here in the middle, maybe. We'll go with lighter washes in the center of the picture, and a little bit darker. So a little more tonal value, a darker tonal value at the sides of the painting. And these are the rocks. We'll put this here too. So we'll get the wash on the rocks. Like that. And we'll cover all the paper right up to the edges of the... And right, what I did here is I sort of left like a spotlight, if you can imagine. A spotlight of color, of just the white paper. There's still a little bit of wash on there, but, you know, it's lighter in tonal value. So I just wanted to do that. And I just soften a few spots. That looks pretty good there. And we only have so much time to do this little bit of touching up, and then we have to let it dry, and that should really be fine. Okay, let's take another break. Once we get on this wash, our first glazing, let's let that completely dry. 100%. It's got to be 100% dry when we come back, and then we'll start putting in our distant mountains, and we'll put in some rocks too, and then we'll start our trees as well. Okay, the paper is dry. It is a little bit damp, and it's still buckled, so it is a little damp, but it's pretty dry. I think we can start working on it. Let's try it out. Burnt umber, French ultramarine violet, or mineral violet, and some blue. Cerulean blue. And we'll start doing our mountains. I think I'm going to go with more of the purplish. If the paper's just a touch damp, that's probably better. If it's damp, it has a little more of that, kind of smooth finish to it. Diffused a little bit. It kind of just looks good. And I'll add a little bit of blue to it as well. And again, I'm trying to stick with our card here that we did, our occasional card. So I'm going to try to stick with those colors. You can also experiment with colors. It's up to you. And then up here, it looks like I had a little more. There was a little more like a rock feel here. Like this looks more like those purpley mountains with trees and forests. This looks more like rocks over here, maybe. Or it's just... And as you can see, I'm just making the colors pretty much the same. I just added a little more burnt umber to this mixture, but I use the same cerulean blue and mineral violet or French ultramarine violet. And then sometimes we could add a little darker tonal value at the bottom of the mountain, the base of the mountain. That looks good too. So some burnt umber at the base of the mountains. They're a little darker. And this is the fun part about watercolor. You can kind of have fun with it. You can try this painting a number of times, different colors, you know, to see how they work out. You might do like a winter scene or a summer scene. This is more summertime, green grass, and you might be able to do this one a winter scene using, instead of green grass, you could leave it the white snow. So that's just an idea. If you like this particular painting, you can try different things like that. And I'm just blotting up a little bit with the tissue here. And you can do that. You can add a few misty kind of feel, a misty feel by just lifting up some paint with the a tissue here and there. So just it gives that, because we're going to paint trees all in front of this. So in front of this mountain range, on this hill, we're going to paint trees all in front of that. Large trees in the front and smaller ones as we go into the distance to very, very minute looking trees all the way in the very, very far distance. So as we do that, you're going to actually, as the viewer of your artwork, or if someone's going to buy your painting and they're going to purchase your painting and buy it and enjoy it for art, they're going to look at it and they're not going to be concerned about that distant mountain range, other than they're going to see it and it's going to make the painting feel great and it looks really good. But they're going to be looking more at the area in the front of those mountains. So you can, again, tap up a little bit of paint to make it look misty in that background, because it is in the far distance. We're trying to make that mountain range far in the distance, so that means it's going to be more bluer, more purple, and it's going to have a little bit of that misty effect with maybe lifting up a little bit of paint with the tissue. And that's a fun thing to try to create that distance we're looking for, so that we're going to have that feel of depth in our painting. And now let's mix up some greens here, and we're going to use sap green. I think I'll just start. A little bit of purple in there is not going to bother anything. So that's sap green, olive green. Let's use some, since this is like a bright sunny day feel, we'll use some of our yellow, cadmium lemon yellow. This is cadmium lemon yellow. And that's cadmium yellow, which is a little bit more warmer, a little more orangey. And we'll use some yellow ochre. And what we can do is we can take some of this yellow ochre and very lightly, I'm going to put some just in the sky over here. Just to warm up that sky a little bit there. And let's start, we'll go with our greens here now. Our greens in the distance, let's make those a little cooler. So I'm going to add a little bit of cerulean blue to my green. And again, I'm just sort of placing the green on the paper. I'm kind of just blotting it along, no particular rhyme or reason, just kind of getting that green on there. And then some of the bright cadmium lemon yellow. I want to get that on there too. More in the foreground though. And some cadmium. Yellow ochre. So that bright lemony color, that's more in the foreground here for the grass in the fields here. And the yellow ochre as well. And you can also put a little in the distance, but more warmer, closer, cooler in the distance colors. I'm going to do a little splashing too to get a little bit of texture. And if we do our brush strokes this way a little bit here and there, we'll do some of those a little more once this dries, this next glazing. So we're doing the glazing technique. And yellow ochre. More high intensity color, closer by, olive green. All right, that's looking really good. So now we have our second wash in, which is our grass. So we did basically a trip through the picture here of paint along the grass area. Now this is, to me, another great place to take a break, let this dry and set up, because we're going to do some rocks next, and we don't want the rocks to get. We don't want them to infiltrate into the green, fresh green and yellows that we've just put here for the grass. We want to keep a very bright light along the tops of these rocks. So to accomplish getting that really light, kind of like light bouncing off the tops of these rocks, we have to let this dry. So this will be someplace where we're definitely going to have to let this dry. And once we come back, we'll be ready to finish the rock section, the foreground, the very, very foreground. And, maybe we'll even do a little, maybe we'll see what we can do we can do some really distant background details later. Let's leave details till last, because I'm already thinking of doing sort of like a darker, maybe like a tree line far, far in the distance, a darker tree line along the bottoms of the mountains. But for right now, I think it's always good to let details go, till we're pretty much almost 90% done. Once we're 90% complete with the main basics of this picture, then we can maybe get into some further details. So it's not bad to think about details as we're going through our painting, but let's keep those till we're really finished with the bulk of the work that we have to do. So now we'll let this dry, which is our second glazing. Along with the mountains. So we did the mountains and the grass second. Now we're going to do our third glazing, which will be the rocks, and we'll let the grass in these distant mountains keep drying as we go. All right, we're back again. We let this dry. So you can see the paper's still buckled a little bit. I'm using good paper. I'm using Arches paper. Arches rough, or this might even be Fabriano paper, rough paper. In any case, it really handles great. It's never going to give you a problem when you're painting on it. Works beautifully. You can extend your work time as you're painting with better paper. So if you have more quality paper, you just try to buy the best paper you can for your money. I'm on a budget myself. Sometimes I'll practice on student grade paper a lot, and then when I'm doing more finished work or on YouTube here, I'm always using the best quality paper I can. And I would say at this point it is damp a little bit, but not too much. So it's not going to really, the paint won't flow out into this green grass area when we're doing our rocks. So let's do our rocks, and since they're going to be super dark in color, we're not worried so much about the other colors in our palette right now as far as, so we're going to use French ultramarine blue, cerulean blue, French ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, burnt umber. We're going to get a rich dark, maybe a little bit of yellow ochre in there too. Let's see how that looks. Okay, good. Now, these rocks are darker at the base, and we can modulate the color. So I'll drop in, I'll charge in some different colors as I go. So I made the main mix a real dark mix, and then you can also take fresh paint right out of and that's why you have to have really soft, moist paint in your palette. Because now what we can do is we can start charging in different interesting colors into our rocks just to make them look better. And then now, as we get to the top of the rocks, we're going to leave that white paper. That's the light coming from above, skipping across the tops of the rocks. And we can do this. We can keep going with our rock formations here. You can do what we can do, we're going to let this, as this dries, we're going to do a few fun things here. So here we go. French ultramarine blue, burnt umber, French ultramarine blue. Okay, and then we're going to leave that top edge of the rocks white paper. Let's do that. Doesn't have to be everywhere though. I think it would. So we would leave the white of the paper on top of the rocks here and there, but not the whole line. So in essence, we wouldn't want to have like a white line going all the way across the tops of the rocks. We want to take a few spots here and there and go over the white of the paper there. It's good. It interrupts the line. That's a good thing. And also, too, in nature, the rocks will have areas where there's going to be some shadowing. And the shadowing is going to be probably on not to confuse things, but it definitely is going to be intermittent, the light on the tops. So some spots you won't have, and you can even have some darker spots there. And we can also take darker paint, French ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, maybe a little bit of, let's stick with the same colors we've been using. And we can make some rock shapes with the darker tonal values. So they would be round shaped here and there. That's another thing we can do. Take that really dark burnt sienna, French ultramarine blue. And another thing we can do also is we can take a maybe like a bamboo pen. When we do ink and wash, we can take our bamboo pen and we can maybe do a couple lines across the rocks just to make it look, maybe there's some maybe like that, just some just to suggest some lines, and that'll be fine. And I'm just going to try to clean up the edge of the tape here so that the the water doesn't go back up into the rocks and make messy looks there. Some messy blossoms of lines and things. So that'll help the picture a lot if we can remember to do that. That'll be a better look to the rocks in the bottom of the painting. Okay, so that's our rocks. Nothing, we don't have to go too much detail on the rocks, just enough like we did here, so that everything looks balanced in our painting. Like we wouldn't spend 5 hours on our rocks here and then, rush through the rest of the painting. Does that make sense? So really, one of the keys, I think I've mentioned this many times, and I always like to mention it, is when we're doing a painting, there's like a rhythm to it. So if we just constantly, when we're approaching our paintings and we're sticking to a rhythm, it should be the kind of the same rhythm through the painting. So if we're doing more of maybe a landscape painting like this and we're using the glazing method, which we are using, we're sort of doing like, 10, 15 minutes of each, glazing, 10 minutes, take a break, 5, 10 minutes, come back, do another section, the grass and the mountains, 5, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, we take another break, we come back. So it's almost like like music. We're kind of in a rhythm, a flow. That looks really good with painting, with creating paintings. Really very effective. If there's a painting style where you like to paint slower, that's fine too. So if we're going to paint a painting like this and we want to go real slow and really just have a slower technique, and that's fine too, then we would just work the same pace. I guess what I'm saying is we wouldn't want to take one section of the painting and take like an hour or two to work on it and then only spend like a half an hour on the rest, because you'll actually see the difference between the flow of how it was painted. So you can actually, it's noticeable. It's really noticeable if you look at paintings, the flow of the painting. So a lot of the great top pros in the world, if you're out there, you're checking them out on YouTube and you're looking at the videos, and the top pros will usually always have a rhythm to their painting. Some painters will paint fast. Some painters will paint at a medium pace. And other painters might spend weeks on their paintings. And that is a look too, which is interesting. So they're always going to be painting in long periods of time when they're doing their paintings. They might spend, 40 hours on one painting of a decent size. But they're going to be doing the same slow, meticulous methods as they go through their painting during that 40 hours in that week to do one painting. Other painters are going to take 3 hours and they're going to work with the same rhythm like a musician would have, a rhythm to the music, let's say. where you're going to go through it in a rhythmic way and complete each section, each glazing. And so there's a flow to your paintings. So whatever workflow you're doing, whether you take a lot of time with your paintings, I just would say definitely try to keep that same pace as you go through your painting. So again, I wouldn't spend 2 hours doing these rocks and then only spend half an hour on this sky and the grass and the mountains. I would say, sort of equal time for everything so that it kind of looks all the same. All right, so let's let this dry a little bit and we'll start our trees. We'll take a break. It's always good. Let's take breaks. Okay, we're back and we just had a break. We let this dry a little bit. You can see the rocks here dried quite a bit. That wash there, which is good. And I just wanted to take a break anyway since we worked about 10 or 15 minutes or 20 minutes. I just wanted to say if everyone would consider subscribing to my channel. If you haven't subscribed, this is a great channel. We actually make videos once a week, every week, and we do paintings of every type. We use all types of methods, techniques. We also do all kinds of subject matter, landscapes, seascapes, cityscapes. We do still life, flowers, the whole gamut. So we do the whole enchilada here. So there's, you can get everything right here on this channel. And we spend time going over all the details of how to accomplish a painting from start to finish. So that's the most important thing I think I have on my channel here that makes me special. And I want everyone to have a great time with their watercolors and succeed and have a wonderful time painting and enjoying it. And so I hope you'll consider subscribing and click, if you want to click the notification bell, you'll know exactly when my videos come out. So you'll be able to watch it at your convenience. And other than that, let's get back in. We'll get started again. And also, if you like this video, if you can click the like button, that really helps me a lot. And if you don't like it, that helps me too if you click the thumbs down button. Let's see here. Okay, we're going to start our trees. So in the tree section here, we're going to do all the trees now through here, this beautiful wooded hill. We've got the grass in there. I think it's not quite as bright, the colors. I didn't get as much lemony colors in there, certain spots. We can always add that in later. So we'll do that later maybe. In any case, we have 3 brushes. We'll use the round brush we were using before, number 6, Raphael. And I might have used an 8 before on the grass and the sky. So we're going to use a 6, a little smaller. And we're going to use 2 needlepoint brushes. These are Alvaro Castanet needlepoint brushes, a number 8 and a number 6. And these will get us to get those beautiful trees all through this picture on this hill. So you'll see as we use these are the perfect brushes for real detailed work like this. And I have these, and I have a few more different sizes. A larger size, I think I have a 10 and a 12 also. And I also have I think there's a 4. I think I have the 4 size too. So I have all the ones he has on his website. And all right, let's start out here. Now we're doing trees. Let's get some burnt umber, some cerulean blue, some burnt sienna. So we're just going to use the same colors we were using before. And we did the light sketches. And if you find your brush has too much paint, you can always check a little bit of paint off on the tissue. And that'll give you more of a lighter look. And maybe not as much paint flooding on the paper. That can be a problem sometimes. So I'm just going to do quick upward brush strokes. These are thicker tree trunks here, you'll notice. And I'm skipping spaces. You see how I skip some spaces here and there? That's good. that gives you the feeling of light sort of bouncing off the limbs. And then some of them we can do all the way through. And I try to avoid, if I can, these thick brushes. See, already I'm having a problem with the bigger brush, so let me start to move into the needlepoint brush really soon, but this is a thicker tree, so let me, like that. And we will okay, so that's again and once in a while I do a little limb coming this way and that way, but for the most part that's pretty good. And we can also take a little bit of cerulean blue, pick up a little bit of that color and gray down that cerulean blue a little bit, and we could do some of that too, some lighter. But I think this is, you're going to see, and again, I'm doing this kind of fast. I'm not taking too much time. And then maybe I'll do another medium size. So I don't want to go from really big to small right away. I want to kind of gradually, see now this one over here is a little bit, a little more in the distance, but it's still okay. And kind of looks good too if we add some darker dark down the center of it. That sometimes works a little bit too, to make the tree look a little more and we're going to have a lot of fun doing the shadows too coming up. All right, so we have like, yeah, this is pretty good. This is again, I'm going to try to do a few more before we get into the distant trees. Let's do a few more like that. And all right, so that looks pretty good. And I'm going to take a little bit of purple and green and just do a couple splashes here, just to feeling of leaves a little bit. Maybe some green and yellow. Okay, now we're going to go with our number 8 needlepoint brush, and we'll start with the same thing. We'll use this here, purple, cerulean blue, burnt umber, a little bit of burnt umber, kind of get a nice medium tonal value with that. If we have to, we dry off a little bit on the tissue, and then we'll start putting in our medium-sized trees here. And we can kind of line them up. We can kind of make them in like lines in a sense, like to kind of make that really that feeling of and distance in the painting. And at this point, we're not too worried about incredible accuracy. And you can take more time if you want. I'm going to start to move along here at a more of a rapid pace, which is okay because you can take more time if you want. I'm trying to move along here at a good pace to you can add branches to these as well too. As you're working, you can go back and start doing some more limbs here and there. And then as we and if you find there's a spot that gets a little bit if you find you're going over a spot too much, no big deal. Okay, so these are the middle distance trees here and there. And now you'll see on the sides, I'm not going to be too concerned. I'm just sort of getting verticals on the sides here. Again, on the sides of the painting, I will tend to add less detail. Sometimes the faster we go with the tree trunks and the trees, they look better actually. All right, so we're kind of getting a feel for this here, and now we're going to use our number 6 needlepoint brush, and this is we'll use that same color again, maybe a little bit bluer. So we're using more blue to this mixture because now these are going to be lighter in tonal value. And as you can see, we really start to with these smaller tree trunks and things, we really can get that feeling of distance there. And I'm making sure I get them in in between the other trees so we can see them carefully like that. All right, good. So now we get the idea. You know, the closer the trees are, closer to us, they're going to be darker. And then further in the distance, we gray down the mix and make it a little bit bluer with some cerulean blue. And that's really the most important thing about this is, you know, to get that distance, we have to change the mixture to make it more bluer and grayer for the trees in the distance. So if we do that, we're in great shape. Now we're going to mix some, I'm going to go back to my number 8 needlepoint brush. We're going to mix some cerulean blue and some mineral violet, maybe a little bit of some burnt sienna, a little bit of French ultramarine blue, and I'll use the number 6 Raphael brush at first to get some of these larger shadows. So I can do this. We're going to do our shadows now. Okay, now let's take a break actually. All right, so I'm hoping you'll take the breaks the way I'm doing it, the same way, each time you finish a section. So right now I'm starting to work on, let's do just these large shadows here. And they're just basically done really quickly, really loosely. You're just, the idea of branches like this. And they might go over the rocks too. And they're darker. They're darker at the closest to the tree, they're darker. And then they get lighter as they And if you go with too much shadow, you can just lift up a little bit with a tissue. Okay. And let's take one more break, and then we'll finish the shadowing on the distant trees, and that's going to tie everything all together and really give that ultimate pleasing feel of a sunny day on a nice walk in the mountains. Okay, we took a break, 5-10 minutes, always good. And we're actually going to get started back in again. We're going to, beautiful painting here, we're painting into the light. The light is out in front of us. We're in a field. We're taking a beautiful walk through the mountains, and we're looking up this beautiful field on an angle, and we can see the light and all the distant trees there and the beauty of the woods, and it looks just great in the shadows. So let's finish up our shadows on our trees here. We have our shadows again. We're using 2 needlepoint brushes, and we're using a regular larger round Raphael watercolor brush, and that's for our larger trees that we did just a few minutes ago. So we're completed with that. Now we're just having our final shadowing done with our 2 needlepoint brushes. I'll use the larger one first, and I think we should be able to get quite a bit done with this. So I'm using more or less mineral violet and for the shadowing. Now shadowing I think is best if we just really go quickly. That's really, and just have them all the same angle. So when we're doing our shadowing, we just remember, we'll add a little blue to that. Cerulean blue. Cobalt blue maybe. Cerulean blue is better. We use that throughout the painting. So I think that's the best thing, is just to remember to sort of make all the shadowing all the same. I would start right under the tree with the brush and then pull away like this towards this way. And that's all. So I go to each bottom of each tree and just work outwards like that, like this. Start at the bottom of the tree and then work out like that. Same here, start at the bottom of the tree. And then you can just be fun. You don't have to really worry anything. The only hard part about the shadow is right here. You have to land your brush on the bottom of the tree and then pull towards this way. And that's all. And that's it. And then some squiggly lines at the end of those. Bottom of the tree, out. Like that. Like this. You know, and as they're further in the distance, no problem. We can get a little more carefree. This here is a little more, this shadow is going to be a little bit larger, like that. And then we just do just like that. Simple. Start at the bottom of the tree and then work your way out like that. And then these here. Then we go with our smaller brush yet. This is the fine number 6 needlepoint brush. And these are for the really distant trees, the farthest distant trees in the back. We still want to get those. We want to have shadows on those as well. Just maybe quick. We don't have to do too many there. So we just... If you see that some of the bottoms of the trees need a little bit of a darker wash, you can add a little bit more to the base of the tree. Like that. A little bit of paint. I would go upwards though, like that probably, like this. Yeah, I would, but not to get too fussy with this. We'll call this a day. You know, this is just the way we envisioned it. We used our and these are we can use some more finer brush strokes here in the top of the painting. Just a few here and there. Just to give us that really pleasant feeling of all the branches and interesting things going on there. Like this. And a few branches coming down. That always helps too, just to drop in a few branches that, you know, angled down toward the ground. Sometimes the leaves get heavy on there and the branches turn and they flow toward the ground. So that'll help it look more realistic. And I think that's really, I think it's good. It looks really nice, very pleasant, very, you could add more things. Again, I always say less is more. So if we can let it, we'll peel off the tape. We'll see how it looks with the tape removed and framed out. And we can put a background on that. All right, so that is a real interesting painting you can do. Not difficult at all. This is a real simple painting to do. You saw how we did it. Glazings. We just did the glazings of the sky in the foreground, blues and purples, just 2 colors. And then we did our second glazing with the purple and blue mountains. We're just using the same colors over and over. Greens, we added the greens into the hills here, these hills, with some gold, some yellow ochre. That was our second glazing with the mountain. Third glazing was the foreground rocks here. And then our last bit of work was just doing our trees, and those are very simple, upright brush strokes with some brown and some purple and blue colors, kind of mixing it up, and then just using some lighter grayed down colors, some lighter gray colors to do our distant trees, and then we added in our shadows last. So this is really a fun painting to do. I hope you'll try it. Try it in different seasons, maybe white for snow. If you want to try a same version of this, but just leave this all white snow. That's a real beautiful effect too you can do. Fall time, you can add more gold and red colors. So it's a season you can do basically all 4 seasons you can paint this, for more different looks and effects. All right, we'll see you on the next video. Bye for now.